It is July 25. We dove in to Acts 4, 5, and 6 today. It's a solid session. It's a good day today. It's William's graduation party, so that'd be a vibe. And then I gotta run after this, that's why I'm wearing this. But anyways, Acts 4, 5, and 6. Some wild verses, really seeing the Spirit move. You know, it's obviously kind of the idea with Acts is the Spirit moving through the Spirit by Christ, by God, right? And through the disciples, through the apostles, through the 120, right? Which we now see that 120 is actually closer to about 5,000. Wild. We see that in verse 4. But so Peter and John got arrested completely unlawfully by the Sanhedrin. And then we see later in the passage as well, they get arrested once again by false witness. So people are really trying to tear these guys down. And I don't even think they've been doing this for that long. So absolutely wild. But that's that. First thing I really caught was that one verse. It's a common verse, but it's a really, really good, powerful verse. Verse 12 of 4:12. Says, "Nor is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved." The idea there, man, is you gotta see this, where there's really only two ways to life, right? There's only really two paths to the end of a human life. That is the one helpless way, the one way that will get you nowhere, that will end in death eternally, and that's living by works, right? And then the other one is living through Christ and by Christ and under his name, right? Which it's not actually his name that's being implied there, the name of Jesus. It is through him, through his person, through what he has done. So it just says his name. But that's people kind of get the wrong idea there. That then the power is in the name of Jesus. No, it's through him. But again, there's salvation in no other to lead to a life eternal, not a death eternal. It's through him. There is no other way. I just love that verse. It's a really powerful, great verse. Good memory verse for sure. Furthermore, getting to verse 29 with this beautiful, absolutely beautiful prayer by Peter and by the kind of the 120. Yeah, I'm assuming mostly by Peter. It's a prayer for boldness. A prayer that is beautiful even today. To speak the name of Christ, to not stray when persecution comes or when threats arise, but to trust in God through the Spirit, and to trust in the Spirit through God, right? For well-being, for safety, if you want to say that, but really just for that strong faith, right? To stay true to his will, really. But yeah, such a beautiful prayer. Beautiful prayer. For boldness. I love it. And then we see a contrast here. We see, like, for an example, all these people who are giving to the apostles, financially and otherwise, their proceeds to further the apostles and what they're doing, right? To further the Spirit and the work of the apostles. And there's this one guy, Joseph, who sells, being a Levite, he sells all his land and literally gives everything at the apostles' feet. He leaves nothing for himself. He understands the purpose, God's will. He wants all of his to be theirs, right? For the purpose. And then jump a chapter into 5 now, and we see those two names, Ananias and Sapphira. We all know those names. Who held on to their earthly possessions as a complete contrast, right? But the sad part is, I forget how I've heard it explained before. I didn't have a full understanding until now, actually, which is kind of cool. But really, I wrote down 3 points. They were holding on to temporal, eternally lost things, right? Like, we are called to lay up for heaven. They were laying up for the earth, right? They were doing this. They were worried about their finances, number one. They didn't trust that if they didn't give everything, they would have enough for themselves. So they were not trusting in the Lord, right? Like, not trusting for provision. They thought they had to provide for themselves. And, well, yeah, to an extent you do, but faith is much higher than that. Much, much higher than that. They were worried about finances. Furthermore, they actually lied about the amount they would give, likely for attention, kind of like pride, right? Like, oh, I'm giving this much, I'm going to sell all this and give this much money, right? All this money to kind of probably prove themselves to others who were doing the same, but maybe didn't have as much, That was the idea. There was a prideful mindset behind it, right? So that's the second. They were doing it for attention. And third, they had a heart of selfishness. They did not want to give everything, which is okay. That's completely okay. If even today, like, it's okay to keep some for yourself, right? To have some money to provide for yourself that has so graciously been blessed by you, blessed by God to you, right? Through your job or through your hustles or whatever you're doing. That's blessing, that's provision. We have to keep some of that to feed ourselves, right? To provide for our families. But when you lie about the amount you're going to give and have a heart of selfishness in keeping part of that instead of giving what you said you were going to give, all of a sudden you have a heart of selfishness, you have a heart of dishonesty, you have a heart of lying. And in verse 4, it says, you have not lied to men, but you've lied to God. So it was further than their words. It was a heart posture. It was their heart, right? It wasn't their words anymore. This was their heart posture towards God. And it ended in both of them dying. Ananias and Sapphira both. They ended up dying for their dishonesty, for their like, we actually see it. It says by Satan, like satanic intuition. So wild stuff, but it's not okay. Absolutely not okay. Moving further, again, the apostles are on trial. This is verse 22 of 5, and this is actually just before that. The apostles were freed by an angel. So I think this kind of keeps going. It's a pattern of the theme, really, of them being on trial and being imprisoned, right? It's a theme. It's definitely a theme. And then chapter 6, we see 7 chosen to serve is the title of the chapter. And this is where the church starts getting so big that there need to be almost like different sects of ministry and preaching and, all of the above, right, of the church. And we see that this one, 7 are chosen to serve both financially and with their hands to actually serve specifically widows who cannot provide for themselves, and who don't have a part in the daily distribution is what it's called, which I'm assuming is kind of like a city ordinance type thing that provides for people who can't, but widows likely were not involved in that for their place in society. So the 12 said that they don't want to be a part of that. They want to keep their focus on what they're doing. So they said to the other 120, to the whole multitude, it says actually, to choose 7 men who were fit to serve, who were fit to take up that sect of the church, right? And yeah, they chose 7 men, Stephen being one of them. And we know Stephen is very, very, very cool guy. Very cool guy who later in the chapter 6 was accused of blasphemy. And that's when we see that his face shines like an angel, right? Sitting there in front of the council. His face shone as an angel, and everybody was like kind of taken aback. Yeah, it's cool. Stephen's a cool guy. We'll see more of him likely in the next couple chapters, I'm assuming. But yeah, that's 4, 5, and 6. That's my takeaways. Biggest takeaway I think for me was in 4 verse 32 with the people kind of giving up their things. Like, that is still so relevant today. We need to give to those who need what we have, right? Like, we're blessed with so much. We can give a part of that graciously. Like, out of our provision, we can provide for others as well. And to not hold on to the earthly, temporal, things that will eternally be lost, right? But to give. So, love that. Yeah, that's Acts. I'm going to keep it going.